Okay. Hello everyone and welcome to the Goodie Bag Podcast. That's the name I'm going with for now. I don't really know if that's what it'll be called or if there'll be more episodes, but this is a start. Today's episode is going to be pretty straightforward because I'm doing it for a certain purpose. Um, but I would like to talk about something that you may or may not have heard of. But first, I'd like to ask, rhetorically, of course, have you ever heard of something called Amazon or, you know, Netflix? We all love those, and we could basically get whatever we want whenever we want. Most people use them on a daily basis. There seems to be a common theme in the way technology and services advance in our society. When you look at the popularity of services like these, um, it's easy to see a common trend. It's like if there's just a way to make something slightly more convenient or make a business model out of it, there's always going to be a push for it and people trying to make it happen. So today, I'd like to talk about a new kind of service that some people may have heard of and some people may not have. Um, this is cloud gaming. It utilizes cloud computing technology. So remote servers will host things on the internet. Um, Basically, to sum up what cloud computing is, it's just technology that uses servers hosted on the internet to do things with data. It could be, you know, store it, transfer it, just networking and hosting programs that other people can use. Like, say, if you've ever made a website, that would be something that utilizes cloud computing. Like Microsoft Azure is something that I used when I was in my computer science class, and we hosted our websites on Microsoft Azure. So, cloud computing isn't novel at this point. I mean, a lot of things have been using it for a long time. Um, Google Drive is another good example. Microsoft and Google Drive are pretty much like the big ones that people would come across on a daily basis. Obviously, that's used to back up data. But the current innovation surrounding cloud computing has to do with the gaming industry. Instead of having to buy a new expensive game console every couple of years or spend thousands of dollars on a high-end PC, cloud gaming has enabled the ability to play games that are being hosted on a server through the device of your choice over the internet. At least that's what's supposed to happen. Um, Services like Google Stadia and Project xCloud um, aim to be like the Netflix, Hulu, or Disney Plus to your games. The vision is a world where anyone can take out their phones or turn on their TV and just play whatever they want without the need for powerful hardware. Um, and all the computing and rendering that your console or computer would normally do at home is now done in a facility with thousands of servers instead. The data from it is then streamed to your device, much like a TV show or movie on Netflix. All right, now let's get into the meat of the topic here. I'm not just here to explain what it is. What I've attempted to figure out is whether or not this technology is truly groundbreaking or if it's just, a bunch of kind of bloated claims. But we'd like to see if it actually has the potential to replace traditional gaming on physical hardware or at least become a prominent part of the gaming industry. As far as whether or not people are actually invested or interested in this, well, the answer is yes. According to Grandview Research, the market size of global cloud gaming is expected to expand at a compound annual growth rate of 48.2% from 21 to 2027. 2021 to 2027. Wow, that's a lot of 20s to say. Um, the market was already valued at almost half a billion in 2020, so the growth was substantial. Let me show you real quick, just the numbers that I'm talking about. This is where I got the data from. I'll be putting links at the end of this for all my references. So this is the graph I was showing. This is the growth that cloud gaming has. Um, or it's the growth that it's expected to have over time. It started here in 2016. The market size was about $23 million US. And then you can see it's supposed to keep growing very rapidly. Um, yeah, so the demand and growth of this is probably because of the convenience I mentioned earlier. Um, Cross-platform gameplay is something that many gamers covet as a feature in modern games, especially when you have a friend that has a game console that you don't have, or someone plays PC or something, but you have the same game and you want to play together but you can't. Or even worse, you buy the game specifically to play with each other and then you realize that it's just not compatible. It's very frustrating. I've dealt with it. If the games were made available through an internet service, there should be less of a problem with having to worry about connectivity. 5G and the Starlink Wi-Fi network that is in development, um, is so that's like a satellite network that's gonna have a bunch of satellites in space. A bunch have already been sent. It's an Elon Musk thing. It's to get global internet coverage and stuff. So this, along with 5G, will also help in the spread of doing more things over the internet, like gaming. Um, oh, yeah, I already explained that. So yeah, data streaming will just be more accessible in general if uh if there's more ways to connect to Wi-Fi. But there's more than just interest that has to do with this. It's a pretty loaded topic as far as whether this will be a revolutionary technology of the future. Um, for starters, people have standards for how their games run, including me. For anyone who already has a way of playing games on a high-end device, they would likely be worried about losing performance when the content is being streamed. Have you ever tried to watch a video or a movie or show and it just starts buffering in the middle of it, or it takes forever to load in the first place? Or, sometimes you're out of nowhere, like the quality will just take a huge dive and it's like you're watching something from over 15 years ago. This is a real concern for someone switching from physical hardware to streaming from the cloud. So I think it would only be right to take a look at the performance among all the different options. So two videos were made by this YouTube channel I like named Linus Tech Tips. He covers a lot of things having to do with technology and video games and stuff, and so I watch him all the time. Yeah, so the point of the videos were to test the most, well, pretty much all of the now available cloud gaming service, but especially like the most popular ones, and to see, you know, the the performance for what you're getting and how they stack up against each other, like whether it can play at high resolution, whether there's delay between your inputs and the output of the game, um, just lag in general, how it looks. Um, yeah, so let's see. So if you probably haven't heard of Linus Tech Tips if you're not someone who's interested in this stuff, but him, Linus is like the main guy of the channel, the owner, and most of his employees are all PC gamers. So they have a little bit of a skew towards what they like, and they're just used to things being physical, which most people are because that's how games have been for the past however many years. Um, so the services that they went to test are provided by NVIDIA. Yeah, so they tried NVIDIA, who is a graphics card manufacturer, and they're pretty prominent in the gaming industry because they make the hardware that is able to run games physically. They're mostly known in the PC world because they make a big component of your PC, but they do work with um, companies like Microsoft and Nintendo and things like that to get their graphics in their consoles as well. So that's the first one they tried, and then they also tried Google Stadia, Microsoft's xCloud, and then PlayStation Now. So GeForce Now is the one from Nvidia, and it's like it's a more compelling offer to someone who wants to own their games, and just for someone who already has games in like a Steam library or Uplay or something, because GeForce Now allows you to access those games and stream them without having to rebuy them or anything. The only caveat is that some game developers did not license their games to be used with the service. Some developers just decided that they didn't think it was a good idea to have their games on the service for some reason. With Google Stadia, the games you can play are based on the games you buy through the service itself. If you don't keep the subscription, you can't access your games anymore. Some games on Stadia are also more expensive than they would be on other platforms. And then let's see, with PlayStation Now, you can only play on PC and PlayStation at the moment. I don't know if that is going to change or not. Um, and based on initial testing, Stadia had the worst latency, making inputs delayed and fast-paced games harder to play. In general, though, all the services perform pretty similarly. I guess I kind of skipped over the xCloud. That started very early, like 2018. Well, I don't know if it was early in the year, but it was in early stages in 2018, and it was really only running on phones, I think, and Xboxes maybe. Um, but it was in a trial state for a long time, and I don't think that it's even done yet. Let's see. Where am I going with this? Okay, so in a more recent video, Linus from Linus Tech Tips revisited the idea because the first one was just initial testing while things were still kind of in an early state. And yeah, so he revisited the idea because right now there's a chip shortage in computers. So graphics cards and game consoles cannot be made as quickly as they would be. Plus the demand for them is really high with quarantine and the fact that people are using graphics cards for crypto mining, and other people just like to buy out the stock and then sell it for as high of a price as they can. It's really disappointing. But yeah, many people have been left without new hardware. So with cloud gaming, that would kind of resolve the issue. If you have a computer that just has a CPU, like a processor like Intel that has integrated graphics, then you wouldn't even need a graphics card to run cloud gaming, any of the services. And I mean, regardless, you could just use an older system that's complete. But yeah, so Linus says that with the prices that modern graphics cards are right now, upwards of like 1,300 to, as much as 2,000, 3,000, um, you could buy around 5 years of a cloud gaming service instead if you wanted to. So I'll sum up the experiences you get from each service based on his testing. GeForce Now from Nvidia was a little buggy. It had some nice visual touches like ray tracing because they were kind of the inventors of that technology. And then it did have slightly noticeable latency. PlayStation Now was very buggy on PC, but it's supposed to run better on PlayStation, but regardless, it's not a good look. Um, However, the games looked okay most of the time, but mm, not so much on others. There were some visual bugs in the testing, and then it had very noticeable latency compared to the GeForce Now. So like, if you were to look around, it would happen on your screen a lot slower than it should. So you'd be behind on your inputs basically because you'd have to wait for the game to catch up to what you do. Stadia had the most variety with what can run it. Basically, anything that has a browser can run Stadia. Um, if you can access the website. It looked okay, but it added some. What am I doing? Yeah. Yes. Okay. I was saying the right thing, but I got confused. So, yeah, most of the games looked okay, but there were some weird visual effects going on. Like one game that he played, the edges of the character had, like stair stepping is what it's called because it was rendered in a lower resolution, so you can see pixels. And what they did is just like blur the edges of it with like anti-aliasing, and it looked really bad. Like it was noticeable. You could tell that they just kind of smeared it. It was really weird. Um, and that was just to make up for the lack of power, I guess. The latency was inconsistent, but it never got too bad. And it can stream up to 4K, but only at 30 frames per second, meaning you'll never get something very smooth if you stream up to 4K. The more frames per second you have consistently, the smoother the gameplay will be. And it still has little support for cross-platform multiplayer. So even though what I said earlier about cloud gaming being able to enable more cross-platform games, it doesn't seem to be the case so far with Stadia, sadly. So Project xCloud was the name of what Microsoft was developing for their own version of cloud gaming, but now it's just a part of their Game Pass service, which provides a large library of games on Xbox. But yeah, it can only be run on Xbox officially right now. Um, and you kind of have to jump through hoops to get it running on PC. And then even when you're doing it on PC at the current state that it's in, it was almost unplayable because of how much latency there was. It looked fine, and I'm sure it runs really great on Xbox, but this was a PC only test. Luckily, the service still isn't in a finished state. Something to note about all of these tests as well is that they were done in the same building, the same room, on the same PC, and they utilized a very good internet connection because the Linus Tech Tips channel has a big office building and they need reliable Wi-Fi to be able to get any work done. So they have really good internet there. I just wanted to show you Linus's, final thoughts on his experience with his cloud gaming service.
Line today, pretty challenging. Project xCloud is extremely promising in the future, and it's great for Xbox gamers today. Pretty much a no-brainer. But it's really hard to recommend it for PC gamers without graphics cards until you can easily set it up on your gaming PC. PlayStation Now, frankly, kind of sucks for many of the same reasons. Like, I can only really recommend subscribing for a month or two, getting your fill of PS exclusives, then ditching it. And then GeForce Now offers the best overall experience thanks to its wide support for both games and devices, because basically if it works on a PC and the game developer hasn't blocked it, it should work on GeForce Now, but it's effectively the most expensive offering on the table once you factor in that you have to buy all of your own games. As for Stadia, it's still Stadia. It's not the worst in any way, but it's also not the best in any way, and the problem is that it doesn't replace a gaming PC in the same way that xCloud or GeForce Now can at least try to. And on that subject, another benefit of GeForce Now, at least for our audience, is that the library of games that you buy for it and then own can be painlessly ported with your save files and everything to your gaming PC once the shortage is resolved. So I think we're going to give the nod to Team Leather Jacket for today and say that we are excitedly anticipating both future cloud gaming developments from the likes of Microsoft, Amazon, maybe even Shadow, and also looking forward to a world where we just don't have to care about those cloud gaming developments anymore because we can actually just buy graphics cards.
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of be a part of this and try the new wave of cloud gaming for myself and record a result that could be more similar to the average consumer, not someone with, amazing Wi-Fi. So I got a free trial of Google Stadia Pro. And let me start by saying that if you have a slow or crowded internet connection like I do at school, you won't have a good time with the service flat out. Not only did the game I wanted to play, called PUBG, or Player Unknown's Battlegrounds, have no keyboard and mouse support on it, but that game and others I tried rarely ran at a playable speed. There was just too much lag in the game to get anything from it. I let a couple friends try it out at their own place. They didn't notice any problems on their Wi Fi network. Um, they seem to have a pretty reliable network there and pretty quick. In their words, the website looked appealing and well designed. No noticeable lag or latency. Obviously, a very different experience than what I had. However, they're not familiar with computer games like I am, so they felt like there wasn't enough guidance on the website on how to control the games in the website itself on a keyboard and mouse. This may come down to individual games, but I did not. I Yeah, so I noticed that they took a little bit to figure out just where to go on the website and everything. My house is somewhere in between my school and uh, the apartment Wi-Fi as far as how fast and reliable it is. Um, my friends and I used my gaming laptop to run the tests, and then I had my mom try it on her iPhone 8, and my sister played it on her MacBook Air. Getting things set up was a struggle with my mom because not only is she not familiar with the platform or gaming too much, but apparently you can't even play Stadia currently on the app on iOS. You have to use your own internet browser. Um, and then, her overall experience, she said, latency I think was fine. When I pushed the button, it worked. She also felt that the visual quality was good and had no complaints with the way the game played. Finally, she said she does think, though, that it would have been better to play on a computer or TV, but was happy with the built in touch controls. My younger sister is a bit more familiar with games and had an experience that was worse than my mom's, which I believe is partly due to the fact that my mom was able to use data or Wi Fi on her phone. She said, when the game had to register more inputs in a short amount of time, there was a slightly higher delay in input. No, not slightly. Why did I say that? There was a month. Yeah. So when she had to do a lot of things at once, there was a higher delay in input noticeably, and it began to lag and drop resolution at times. Sorry, I kind of got robot just like reading from the script. Something that stuck out to her as well is that a lot of games had very little customization in the graphics settings, so she wasn't able to really change the quality of how it looked versus like performance much. She did feel that the website was easier to use, or just easy to use in general, but also noted that in dark parts of the game especially, you could clearly see squares or pixels. This is either from the game dropping resolution and actually having visible pixels, or what a lot of a problem that you can see a lot in cloud gaming and like streaming is that there's an effect that can happen called blocking due to video compression. It has a similar effect to low resolution because there's squares on the screen um, that look like pixels. Based on the results of this primary research, I would only recommend using a cloud gaming service if you really have good internet wherever you'll be using it. Another potential audience, though, could be someone who has passable internet but is more of a casual gamer and doesn't care too much about the visual quality, or maybe they don't need quick inputs for like competitive games and things like that. If you just play story games and just for fun, it's not as important to have very quick inputs. All right, now let's say for a moment that cloud gaming takes off and becomes a popular choice for all consumers. What kind of effect would it have on our environment? You would think that it would be better than traditional gaming, considering each user doesn't have to buy their own new machine. As it turns out, that's not really the case. There's always hardware somewhere that needs to run these games. It doesn't just happen by magic. But instead of it now being like in your room or home or whatever, It's now in a giant data center streaming content to you. Adele Beardmore wrote an article about just this topic that gives good insight about how bad the impact of cloud gaming and computing would be for the environment. She reports that in 2018, 50 million metric tons of e-waste was generated globally, and she said that it's mostly due to the fact that technology frequently gets replaced when something new or better comes out, especially in commercial settings. Let me show you real quick. Okay, now for the environmental part, this is where it talks about the 50 million metric tons of e-waste. It's very fun. You know, that's a lot of mass of waste on our Earth. And then she also talks about the fact that components for batteries are often mined unsustainably here. And then, you know, the disposal of them is toxic and everything too. And here's the links that I was talking about. She really has references for everything. It's pretty clear that the amount of waste being produced isn't a good thing, and that cloud computing only adds to it. Luckily, even though we aren't on the right track yet, it is possible to keep reducing the number of waste. Beardmore provides some more suggestions that I agree with to help the cause. A lot of waste comes from big companies, so the first step in fixing this situation would be to hold them accountable for the amount of waste that they produce. It's obviously not impossible because Google has already been working on cutting back for a long time. She says that Google has been carbon neutral since 2007 through their use of renewable energy and carbon offsetting purchases. The company has offset over 19 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. It's called TCO2e in the last 12 years. Laws could be passed to require standards for big companies to ensure that they are more environmentally friendly, and consumers can do their best to hold them accountable, speak out against, wasteful practices that they notice. All right, so I'd like to talk for a minute about the advertisements and claims for cloud gaming. Google made a launch trailer for its new cloud gaming service called Stadia, which I mentioned, and it starts, they have the iconic S in Stadia chant. It's a very weird kind of ad and meant to grab your attention. I'll show you a little clip. I don't know if I'm able to play a lot of it, so I picked a good spot to just represent what it's like. Wait, let me switch scenes again. All right.
He'll show us.
4K, 60 FPS.
With Stadia, you can go virtually anywhere. Live anywhere.
This is amazing!
Play with any who.
So we're inside a game! I think I know that guy! Gary!
Stadia is gaming for free-range humans.
Gary!
Stadia travels across screens.
Gary!
Yeah, okay, that's enough of that. I think you get the idea. It's kind of meant to be in your face and, just to grab people's attention. They describe it as the newest, most logic-defying, mind-bending, absurd gaming platform on Earth. Let me switch back to my camera. Yeah, so the whole thing is just really weird. Doesn't do a good job at describing what it is and, why it's important. It just says that it's the next radical thing. And then it claims to have the games you're looking for despite having a limited library. It it says it can run at 60 FPS 4K even though it can't. And it's pitched as a revolution for gaming, as you don't need a proprietary device that takes up space. It heavily focuses on being a new idea and a new way to play games virtually anywhere. Provides a little information about what it actually is by showing a massive data center that they drive through. Yeah, so basically they just want you to believe that it's the first of its kind and that it's a brand new technology. Many of the commenters were very angry in this, or just disappointed in this video. So you could tell that it wasn't received very well, at least initially. One user wrote 20 games. They have 20 games. This is obviously expressing their frustration with the state Stadia has been in for a long time, or was in at the time at least. And then another laughed at the claim of playing games at 4K 60 frames per second, saying that people fell for it. There are many more comparing it to other failed campaigns and talking about it as a disappointment. Now, Microsoft took a completely different approach to their launch trailer. The video created by Microsoft to introduce their cloud gaming service called Project xCloud really talked about what it was all about. It was more serious. They stated it was a project because it was meant to be in a testing stage. There's ambient noise, it's all pleasant and nice, and it talks about their vision. So let me show you a little bit of that as well.
Our cloud engineers are building a game streaming network to unlock console quality gaming on any device.
There's 2 billion gamers in the world. Some of them have a PC, some of them have a console, some of them have a smartphone, some of them have all three.
What if everybody in the world could play Halo? What if everybody in the world could play Red Dead Redemption? Everybody in the world could play the games. What would we have to do in order to make that possible?
In order to do that, we believe we need to build a game streaming service.
We see game streaming as a great technology, giving you access to the games that you want to play on the device that you want to play them.
All right. Yeah. Like I said, I don't know if there's any restrictions on showing these. I mean, it's basically free advertisement, so I don't see why it would be. But I'll stop there. Pretty much goes on to just talk about why they're doing it, their vision of being able to play games on any device, making their services very accessible to people. You could say that the claims are a little bloated as well, but I think it's done in a very presentable way. And the fact that the service isn't even done yet is a testament to the effort they're putting into it, I'd say. Because like with Stadia, they kind of advertised it and just put it out there and made big claims, but then underperformed, you know? Everything was said to be spectacular, but then they put out a finished product and it clearly wasn't. With this, they're being more transparent that it's not finished. And so they do have some hefty goals. We don't know if they'll get there or not, but at least this is a more realistic video and not as, in your face and just weird. It's also just more informative about what they're actually doing and what it is. It does get a little bit into the ideal that this is a brand new idea and that it'll be hard, but Microsoft has the means to do it. That's what they say. It goes on to explain the resources they have with Azure, yada yada yada. But this was received better, at least, than the Google Stadia announcement. The comment section was a lot less negative for multiple reasons. I already explained why, pretty much. It isn't without criticism, though. Many commenters are skeptical of how well it actually will run because of the fact that it is inevitably reliant on Wi-Fi, and other services have disappointed before. Okay, so what do we take away from this? Well, many see Stadia as a failure already because of all of the little things that kind of add up and make it feel like it's not worth the money. Especially people who are already in the gaming environments already. People who are just being introduced to gaming or something probably won't have as much of a problem with it. But Google also dropped its development team for first party games very recently, and it just didn't live up to its claims. They were supposed to come out with brand new games made by their own development team that were kind of another selling point in why Google Stadia would be great. NVIDIA Shield, or no, sorry, NVIDIA Shield is a device you can use GeForce Now on. GeForce Now by NVIDIA has become very successful, especially in the PC market, like expected, because it's just the most easy. It's the easiest transition from physical gaming to cloud gaming. The others are kind of somewhere in between. PlayStation Now could definitely use some work, but if you're a PlayStation owner, you're more likely to get it. And then xCloud, or whatever you want to call it now, the Game Pass, obviously it's still in development, but the Game Pass makes it a lot more intriguing because Game Pass gives users a lot of free games that they can play with the subscription, and then now instead of just being able to play it physically, they can also play it streamed. So there's just, if xCloud can live up to its potential, then it can become the best or one of the best cloud services out there. So I don't know. I do have my own thoughts on this, which is the point of this. So okay. It's still very open-ended as to whether the future, is in cloud gaming or not. I will say that I believe cloud gaming can become a very prominent part of our future. I don't think physical games will die out anytime soon, but I think that with some work and, kind of weeding out which services are bad and which are good, that the growth that was claimed by the graph that I showed you earlier, I think it's possible. If it's not quite that big, I think it'll at least continue to grow. There's a lot of room for development in this service, and I think if we don't see what's available now as the final product, I believe that that's more of the right mindset to think of where cloud gaming is heading. What we have right now isn't going to be the future of cloud gaming forever. It's like a stepping stone. So if we look at things that way, then I think between that and then the environmental factor, yeah, so that definitely gets in the way. It takes a lot of work from everyone. We need users to be more open-minded. We need the developers to, put in the work and actually deliver something that's good for the consumers. And then we also need companies and individuals to really work on reducing waste, because it's not going to be sustainable long term if we continue to produce as much or more waste than we are now. And if everything switches to cloud computing and gaming, then it will be more waste than we do now. Yeah, and then the casual market, for sure, will probably have some stake in cloud gaming. It'll definitely be the first to jump on board. And then I believe that if it gets good enough, competitive players will have no problem with it, and it'll just be a matter of preference at that point, or what's more convenient for you. That's about all I have. This didn't go the best, but I've made some cuts in places that I messed up and tried to make it better. This is my first time doing something like this, especially by myself. But I appreciate you watching, and maybe I'll have another episode of something, maybe I won't. We'll see. Stay tuned till next time. See ya.